tough times.
Corruption is a vile disease that sucks and drains the health out of something good. Corruption in society is an evil moral infection that keeps community in the state of perpetual sickness. Corruption is a moral virus. It's so potent it leaves its host sick, lethargic, and unable to realize and accomplish all that a well person can. Where corruption thrives, poverty and not prosperity thrives. Wealth is grabbed into the greedy, grubby hands of those who get fat on the toil and labor of good people. Corruption benefits, only temporarily, those who participate in it. Everyone else is a victim of the theft, the deceit, the dishonesty, and the lies that corruption feeds on. You need to know that a corrupt person is stealing from you. Corruption is filthy work and despicable acts of treachery done under the table and behind closed doors. Corruption is a disgusting shame. Corruption keeps a nation back from true development and from progress. Wise investors steer clear of a corrupt environment. They would rather put their resources into a place where the playing field of opportunity is equal for all and not bent towards feeding the financial lust of corrupt, lying, cheating, thieving politicians and government officials. How many wonderful development projects have been lost because the investors didn't want to do business in a swamp of evil? When those great projects go to another nation or to some other place, we all lose. Believe me when I tell you that corruption steals from you, it steals from all of us. Corruption plunders the nation's wealth. Corrupt people compromise on truth, equity, and fairness, choosing instead to feed off the short-term benefits of crookedness, exploitation, and financial perversion. Corruption is not just a personal matter, it's a culture. It's a way of life, not just for individual people, but for companies, communities, governments, and nations. Corrupt nations, hiding behind large companies, will seek to invest in other weak nations in order to take over the assets of the nation that they've invested into. They will provide financial loans to a nation for the much-needed infrastructure, and they will do it with assets that they provide. They will sign contracts by lining the pockets of rotten government officials who participate in this kind of corruption and are then held hostage by their own deceit and greed. Corruption is nothing less than a form of theft and national robbery. A corrupt person steals from everyone in society.
If there was ever a prize for being dunce and corrupt, or DPP would certainly need a handcart to carry home her prize. Good evening and welcome to 2024 Jamaica This Side. Good evening to those on the X, those on Twitch, on Facebook, and on YouTube. Good evening and welcome. Thank you all for joining us. Good evening to all those on the live. Good evening to those on the Twitch. Good evening to Overcomer on Facebook. Good evening and thank you for joining us. Good evening and welcome, Natalia. Good evening, Natalia Freeman. Prof. Gorgeous Lady, good evening and welcome. Beat and Teach, good evening and welcome. Sunshine, good evening and welcome. Monica Willis, good evening and welcome. Patricia Matthews, good evening and welcome. Debbie Jervis, our North American correspondent, good evening and welcome. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you. Head Teacher K, good evening. Head Teacher K speaks, good evening and welcome. Thank you for joining us as usual. Good evening, Paula Shelley. Good evening and welcome, Carla Williams, Good evening and welcome. Yvonne Green, good evening and welcome. Auline Forrest, good evening. Ada James, good evening and welcome. Pamela McNeil, first time seeing you in the chat, good evening and welcome. Sharon Powell, good evening. Angela 43, number confused me, 48349, good evening and welcome. Thank you all for joining us. Good evening, Raymond. Good evening, Stacy. Official. Good evening and welcome. Beulah, good evening and welcome. Thank you for joining us. Good evening. Thank you all for being here this evening. You must remember last night we were discussing those who assault us, those who assault our processes, those who assault our institutions and our organization. What we did not know, the DPP, while we were discussing, accumulated another assault right under her belt. Is Faith here? Right? Hey, Faith, good evening and welcome. How are you? How are you enjoying yourself? Faith is my sister. How are you and how are you enjoying yourself? What did you do today? Where did you go? How is the sun scorching you? Oh, veteran, there this evening. Oh, veteran fall asleep. Well, good evening all and welcome. Cousin Jamie, too cool. You're not here, but you maybe are listening, but good evening and welcome. Are you here, Cousin Myrna? Good evening and welcome. Thank you all for joining us. It's always lovely to have you all here as usual. The Director of Public Prosecution has clocked up another attack under her belt. Everton Morris, sorry. Good evening and welcome. DPP, not enough evidence. DPP, time has passed. DPP, Nzinga pull out her here. DPP, nolly prosequi. You may hear the word nolly prosequi and say, oops, he's swearing. No, the simple translation in English is to wish not to prosecute. It's a weird grammar. Not to wish to prosecute. You may say it's a badly constructed grammar. Not to wish to prosecute. Nolle prosequi. Paula Llewellyn has clocked up a nolle prosequi under her belt. Yes, good evening. Rebel with a cause, good evening and welcome. Lilith Lockerbie, good evening and welcome. Michelle Lewis Wilson God Gives, good evening and welcome. Ada James, good evening and welcome. The DPP has clocked up a nolle prosequi. Pat Brown over on Facebook, good evening and welcome. Thank you for joining us. The DPP has clocked up a nolle prosequi under her belt. And it is the DPP acting dunce ill-informed of the processes open to her in a situation like this. Not also forgetting DPP confused between Section 45 and Section 5. Not to mention what Dr. Nesbitt said Paula do with gunman. I'm not going to repeat it here. When I have to go watch back Dr. Nesbitt. But the DPP has clocked up a lot of things under her belt. An awful lot. Even just as recent as last month. The DPP was confused by process. Process which an experienced director of public prosecution as Paula shouldn't be so confused with. But as it is, Paula, there's always going to be confusion. But I'll get into Paula later because there's much to just go back and forth on from a speculatory point of view, because one thing you must not do from court reporting if you don't have access to the records or the judgment to read is to speak decisively. What you should rather do is speak in general speculation. And that is how I am going to speak. But the Gleaner article is quite an awful long article. I read it today. I'm going to explain to you from my legal understanding. What I will encourage you to do is to read the article yourself. Jamaican Carlos, good evening and welcome. Good evening. Nolle prosequi, the prosecutor, the DPP has clocked up under her belt, Carlos, a nolle prosequi, as well as her confusion between Section 5 and Section 45. Time has passed, not enough evidence. Nzinga pull them out herself. Jamaican Foodie, good evening and welcome. Nzinga pull them out herself. And the list of her dunceness and corruption just flourishes. I mean, you could plant her dunceness and it grows tomorrow morning. It just flourishes just like that. But I want to go to crooked politicians first. This is an advice. This is not an attack. I mean, attack on it if you feel like it, but this is an advice for now. We're not going to stop one from thief. We are fully aware of that. The advice is to steal less. Rather than take up the whole crocus bag and run with it, and we don't get none out of it, steal 30% and spend 10% and spend 70% per week. And I guarantee you, Winston Dawkins, good evening and welcome. I guarantee you, politicians, when it comes to this time, the campaign period, the election period, you wouldn't have to be running around like Andrew Holness and Nesta Morgan after 8 years, telling the people of Clarendon that they now have portable water. Should that be something to be surprised of, or is it something to be shamed of in 2024, just before a general election? Thief 30% and spend 70% per week. We now go stop on a fan thief. We're fully aware of that. If anybody think we can stop on a fan thief, then we head up in a cloud like Fipala. We think she can really understand how to do her job. What we are suggesting, what I am suggesting, steal a bit less. Steal 30%. You no can do it by percentage. Steal 30%. Spend 70% per week. I guarantee you wouldn't have to run around with the shameless lies and the shameless promise and the half-hearted cowboy work and the spruce up the corner work to make sure you fool the people in order to get vote, like you care about them and you do something. No. It's about maintaining your status quo and your power base. Our Beatantis official opening of St. Thomas Road will be tomorrow. Bangarang. Then just a throw it out, so, eh? Then just a throw it out the crocus bag, so. Steal less. I guarantee you, if you steal less, do control stealing. At the moment, politicians do not do lawless stealing. What I would advise is to do control stealing. Control stealing. Make sure whatever we steal, we're not going to steal over 30%. Do control stealing. Dedicate yourself more to use that 70% and spread it evenly across the nation, across the island. I guarantee you a lot of the tricks that you have to pull out of the book at this period, if you were sharing the loot with us, you wouldn't have to be doing these things. You wouldn't have to be running around telling lies, buying vote, putting on band-aids and open wound, pretending to be a surgeon. Douglas Allen, good evening and welcome. Pretend to be a surgeon walking around with a pickaxe on your wholeness. These are the things politicians continue to do to us at this point in time. When they come around now, come act like when them as the prime minister tell us, when you feel me, when you touch me, I am real, I am your brother, I am your friend, I am your uncle, I could be your father. Yeah? This need to stop. The only way it's gonna stop, we need to wake up to the chicanery, the theft, the wanton crime politicians commit against us. The wanton crime politicians commit against us. At this 2024, Colleen Humphreys, good evening and welcome. 2024, we shouldn't be open for vote buying. The amount of information out there, the way information is disposable, the way information is readily available in our hands, we shouldn't be in a situation where politicians can buy our vote. We should be at a point where politicians have to craft proper policy to approach us, and not just proper policy, like the lie they told on the election campaign. You're going to sleep with your windows and your door open, or we're going to, in the first 100 day, legislate a fixed term election date, but with a plan and a budget to implement. And immediate you elect them, you put them to work. The problem is we are playing armchair politics, where the only time we focus on the care home, the care home of our politics, the only time we focus on it will be from the 8th of February to the 26th. And when it's all done, we all go back into political hibernation. And we say, boy, I saw the whole of them tan. Whichever one you choose, the whole of them corrupt, the whole of them tan same way. But you just chose them. You just chose them based on partisan and not based on policy or track record. Does Andrew Michael Holness have the track record to continue? Ubuntu, good evening and welcome. Does Andrew Michael Holness have the track record to continue at the helm? Well, that's a question, Yvonne. But it's for the voters of Clarendon, of Eden and Clarendon, to answer that question. And it is for the voters across Jamaica to answer that question, because me see it many times play out. I'm sure there's a lot of roadside being debushed at the moment across the country. Remember this spruce up on the corner, Galangin? I'm sure a lot of this, at this point, a lot of our drains and gullies are being cleared across the country. I'm sure at this point, you may see the mall and tar on some of your local roads. Why should we accept a busy 2 week of politics, a busy 2 weeks of politics, and then everybody go into hibernation and stealing? Into hibernation and stealing at the end of it all. Mala drop like crazy, don't talk, shoot, beat. Wait, the Mal start drop already? You know the amount of health condition, the amount of respiratory. Good evening and welcome, Amazing Grace. You know the amount of respiratory problem and disease created just by our road conditions. You know the amount of respiratory problem created in our Jamaica, particularly in St. Elizabeth, in Parity, where I'm from, because they draw San to the district and then draw Mal to the district. And wicked Nestamagan, non-Nestamagan, Flight Green have where walk past on riverbed. And when them ready, them give a rope, then throw down Mal. When rain fall, it on piot piot. When drought come and vehicle pass or breeze a blow, dust would and blind you. Cousin Marina, good evening and welcome. How you doing? Me there shout you out already and ask if you're there. You just a come. Good evening. St. Thomas, them a drop Malto. So these are all the chicaneries that you are going to have to come up against up until election day. You're going to see them be busy doing everything, spending your money in voting coercion. And then in the last 24 hours, before the poll opens, this is where our politicians unleash an assault on us across the country by going around and buying votes from people who can barely find a night dinner. Sometimes they buy even some of the ambitious ones who can do without it. And this is the effect of how we end up with people like Paula Llewellyn, entrenched by a corrupt system. When Wholeness took us to election in the middle of pandemic, September 2020, it was a con. Why was it a con? Just before the pandemic and into the pandemic, the Prime Minister started getting a lot of political favorability. Some of you would remember, in the first 6 months of COVID, the Prime Minister was dubbed the next Michael Manley, Jamaica's next Michael Manley. A lie me I tell? Somebody in here tell me if I lie me I tell. The way the Prime Minister was seen to be handling the initial stage of the pandemic, the Prime Minister was compared to the next Michael Manley. A lie me I tell? Somebody correct me if I lie me I tell. Am I lying or am I lying? Was the Prime Minister not compared to the best Prime Minister since Michael Manley? Was he not compared to the Labourite Michael Manley? Carlton Lovelace, good evening and welcome. Debbie said true. And on the back of that, the Prime Minister hijacked us because he had political favorability. The Prime Minister said, this is the time to move on the nation. This is the time to make my move on the nation. The People's National Party is weak and divided. I am being hailed as the best thing since Michael Manley. Sliced bread Prime Minister. And on the back of that, in the middle of pandemic and lockdown, the Prime Minister took us into a general election. Ushering him into a landslide, as they say it. Usher the Prime Minister into a landslide. The People's National Party barely saved itself. And it went sour. Every dictatorial behavior and style of the Prime Minister was unleashed on us. We were the only persons, only people, nation, globally, to be told, don't even come on your veranda. We were the nation who, our Prime Minister swindled millions out of us for lockdown violation rules. It is true to say that other nations had penalty for violating lockdown rules. In Britain, I think it was £20 for your first violation, and if you violate, it goes up. But your first violation, correct me if I'm right, wrong or right, head teacher K Fate or someone else here. It was about a £20 fine for your first violation. Millions was collected. One woman, a JLP supporter from St. Thomas, 700,000 Jamaican dollars in lockdown violation. The full dictatorial style and behavior of the Prime Minister was unleashed the moment he got that undemocratic landslide. Because in that election, if I'm correct on the numbers, the percentage of voter that came out was 39. I saw you go. 21 voted so, and the rest voted so. So less than half of the populace participated in that process. That means the landslide the Prime Minister received was undemocratic because it was on less than 50% of the populace voting. And we ended up with that even though we tend to have a low voter turnout. Because one of the circumstances of COVID and lockdown at the time, and the Prime Minister deliberately took a move on the nation to get the advantage of absolute power. This is the power we see the Prime Minister use to assault the legislative process. Because the People's National Party does not have the voting power in the Senate or in the House of Representatives without people like Carl Sumuda, who stood up against that assault last Tuesday on the electoral and the legislative process. There's no backbench rebel in Andrew's government. So therefore, Andrew can unleash as much as him want, when him want, because there is no legislative bar to him. He can do whatever he wants. This was why he also, in the dead of night, ram a legislation through just before they went on political recess to extend the life of the DPP, because I, Andrew Holness, need a corrupt DPP to make sure block any reference to corruption prosecution for me, my wife, my cabinet, and my party. Somebody buy me a bag of salt. Me not always beg. But me I beg donation to buy a salt because we are really going to have the sun and dry parlor right there. Because if Holness gets his way to steal this local election, as we see the attempt made by trying to remove the office of the political ombudsman into the office of the Electoral Commission of Jamaica, that was an attempt to corrupt the election. If Holness gets his way, God help with Kapala, I go sun and dry with Evan Johnson. Good evening and welcome. Paula Llewellyn, I go sun and dry with we. If Andrew Holness and his crooked regime gets his way. Jamaica is not seeing prosperity under this government. It's just not happening. You may say Wayne is attacking Andrew Holness. Who is the government at the moment? Who is the government that did not deliver on his 100-day promise? Who is the government that has not delivered on his crime plan? Who is the government that 700 billion has gone missing from the public purse under his watch, including in his office? Who is the government that gave away 650 million to private investors to enrich themselves without Jamaicans benefiting? who is the government that gave away 750 acres of Jamaica prime land. It's not attacking. The truth has to be said. He's at the helm. He's the decision maker at the moment. The opposition is not making any decision that can affect us at the moment. When Mark Golden come in, when Mark Golden come in, we sit down here and we are compile dossiers and we are waiting. So don't even think it's attacking Andrew Holness. He is the government that's taken the decision for the last 8 years that affects us. He is the government that could have corrected many wrong decisions that the People's National Party took in their 18 years. Precious Allen, good evening and welcome. So therefore, Andrew Holness is the one we have to direct our argument to. He and his government. He and his government are the decision makers at the moment in all of our affairs. Lady Janice, good evening and welcome. So Andrew Holness is the one that the attention is to be directed at. Of course, Mark Golden doesn't have grace over here. I don't know when it comes to the Silvera issue. I'm not calm nor quiet on Mark Golden at all. And it's not over. But the Prime Minister came back to you with a promise he promised 8 years ago, unfulfilled, and came back with the same promise. Are you going to give him more time? Are you going to partnership? Are you going to partnership with the Prime Minister? Are you going to partnership with the Prime Minister as he's asking in order to deliver prosperity? God, that gentleman said, we have a partnership. We have a partnership, he said, for prosperity. Somebody's calling. I don't know if they're calling to do with the program, but when I take calls, it don't really tend to come through properly. The audience is not hearing. I don't know how to rectify that problem. 1 second. But Jamaicans ought to be aware that the time has come to make decision, not just for, 'cause literally, let's be honest. What am I buying a vote for can't buy Sunday dinner? What am I buying a vote for can't buy Sunday dinner for your family? So let's become ambitious voters. Make we make the government them tap take way. Just let me pause a minute and say good evening to my follower on Twitch and on X. Good evening and thank you for joining us. I know you listen, but you don't really say much. But good evening, welcome. Thank you all for joining us, whichever platform you're on. But a special thank you to Twitch and X, because you don't get shout out enough as who is on Facebook. So thank you for being here, those on Twitch and X. Nova, good evening and welcome. Let us stop behaving cheap and worthless when we're dealing with politicians. The Prime Minister in his flattery out of one of his many mouths on Thursday spoke about you can be proud and you can be poor, you can be proud and you can be poor. The Prime Minister is coaching us to be proud, to be poor and proud of it. While the Prime Minister makes sure he stole his way out of poverty. The poverty, the Prime Minister said that he loved to tell that story. And he doesn't tell it enough because we on social media, we matter. We on social media always a try to tell him story for him. So him feel like say, we no remember it, we never hear it. Him no hear how we repeat it all the while. Prospective power, good evening and welcome. Him still come back, come remind we again, because what? Wholeness have to bamboozle us to make us feel and believe that he's one of us. When you hear me, when you touch me, I am real. I am one of you. This is what this guy does to us. Good evening, Sonia Went. Good evening and welcome. Policy. Policy, not personality. Policy is the way forward in politics. Policy is the way forward, not policy. Not personality. It is the personality, politics, why we are where we are today. Why politicians can drive over reverse, park pound and pick way out peace. George Samuels, good evening and welcome. Drive over with reverse, drive over with reverse, park pound with and pick way out from under them tire peace. This is the destruction of voting for personality rather than politics. Because when you vote for the personality, Mikey Jones, good evening and welcome. They know you are not engaged in the process. They know you don't understand the process. When you sell your vote for a jinka rum or $5,000, they know you don't understand the process. They might drive over you, they might reverse on you, they might park on you. This is the destructive politics. And by extension, the destructive country, the destructive economy. Because what? There's too much for stealing. Because there's no need to spend it on us because we don't understand the process. The few in the wealthy class and those who claim to be middle class. Let me see if this is somebody calling who wants to speak. Good evening. Are you calling to speak regarding the topic I'm discussing?
Yeah, but I'm doing, but to say cannot hear because there's something I would love to say to you because I'm hearing you talking.
Can you turn your background down, please? Because I'm hearing myself coming back to me.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying I see that you're young, so you don't really understand. What I think you should do, listen to some stuff that Damien Crawford saying. The type of thing I want to hear you about how to make people teach them, because what you're saying, because no politician in Jamaica have ever tell a person and done what they're going to do in neither PMP and JLP. I'm 69 years old now, and I hear saying who is the best prime minister from who is not the best prime minister. And you're totally wrong, because all of these leaders, have their fault.
I'm not sure I said that, sir.
You said Mr. Michael Manley is the best prime minister.
No, sir. Let me correct you. That wasn't what I was saying. I was making a statement that Andrew Holness was compared to Michael Manley as being the best prime minister since Michael Manley. That was the reference I made.
Okay, but still, I would say that even when you look at the whole statistic, because
hold on, can the audience hear the caller? Let me know in the chat if you can hear the caller, please.
Yeah, because all what I can say is I'm 60. This next month I'm 69, and I can tell you all what happened with all the leaders. They have their fault. All of them have their good and bad. Every one of them, from coming down from Bustamante, Mr. Michael Manley, Shearer, all of them, Coach Edward Siaga, Mr. Patrick, all of them have their bad and their good side. None of them coming that perfectly, because if we would say Mr. Manley was a good leader, he had a very good idea. But if you're going to compare, you can say all the gang violence that could start by him. When he send the people, the little boy, them 17, 18-year-old guys to Cuba to do guerrilla training, and they come back, and who they fighting against? They're fighting against their own one another. When 1974,
but you have to add the comparison to that. It wasn't Manley got chained them to fight against one another. Is a count. It was a. Let me just finish. Let me just finish. Let me just finish this point. No, let me just finish this point. It was a counter to the CIA and the Americans' influation infiltration. That was what Michael Manley was fighting against.
No, but I want to say something. If you're going to fight against the CIA, yes, I don't say nothing wrong about that. But if you're going to fight, don't you have police and soldiers in Jamaica? Why are you going to take up the young person? My cousin going to,
Yes, sir, but the Americans and the CIA never send in police and soldiers. The Americans and the CIA fund gangs to war against the Michael Manley government. Did they not?
I'm going to ask you, who was the prime minister at the time?
Michael Manley was the prime minister at the time.
And you only see the prime minister now, and somebody sending gang and supposed to do. Don't it is responsibility to use police and soldier and kill out those gang? Why you know those? You see, you must realize. You remember what happened in 79? You remember what happened in April 79? 1779 when they burned down Eden Time Home, because they hear the people them singing JLP national anthem song, and 120 something people get burned up, old people burn up down Eden Time Home. You remember that?
Mm-hmm. Which the CIA confessed to.
No, CIA did not confess.
Yes, the CIA confessed to it, sir.
My friend, I was born at Jubilee Grove, 16 Penn Street. So I think that's happening. Me and 50 you say you go to school together. I went to Mazigo Excelsior. So I can do these things. But I see you guys learn something. Mr. Manley come up with a very good plan when they killed that gentleman who did own his store, just like how you have courts, before courts, with a furniture store. When they killed him, and he decided that he started that thing that he come up with to get rid of criminals. That was a very good plan.
Do you think Andrew Holness is leading the country in the right direction?
No, what I say to you is that what Andrew Holness do. What I'm saying to you, when Mr. Patterson dead, this man.
No, sir. Let's deal with the present government in the time of an election.
You have to talk about these things, my brother. When the person, if this man could some stuff, and Mr. Patterson come and get those things, this man could. You think I'm going to blame Mr. Patterson for that? I would blame Sierra, because he's the one this man could certain thing.
Do you think Andrew Holness is leading the country in the right direction?
Yes.
Can you point to at least 3 successes of Andrew Holness?
Okay. The success what he done, he reforming the armed force. That is number 1.
Which armed force, sir?
The military.
Okay. And another?
And the police force were trying to get back the special branch, what they dismantle, where the investigation used to come from, is doing that. And if you take notice, the
Are you
employment
happy
rate
with the Are you happy with the overall performance of the Jamaica Constabulary Force? Are you happy with the overall performance of the Jamaica Constabulary Force? With the overall performance of the Jamaica Constabulary Force?
No, we are you got.
No, sir. I'm asking about the Jamaica Constabulary Force.
No, I'm talking about Jamaica Constabulary Force. Yeah, I said some eras they make mistake because what must not be the police force is in the com. Because how can you tell a policeman, a guy that shoot?
All right, I need you to point to me one more of Under Wholeness success. I asked you for 3.
Right. The other one is employment rate gone down in single figures where never happened in history of Jamaica.
Do you understand the graphics of how they achieve the employment rate they published, sir? Do you understand how that research was done and the things that they looked at and the people who they particularly looked at in that survey?
In the service of employment, it's in the servant of employment. When you check and see how you take the rate up, as you said now, it's a year said something about poverty. And he said you don't have to be, he said you can have to be poor, but you can come out of poverty, which is true. Because I was born in Jonestown, growing up, but I come out of poverty because I was with parents. I go to school.
The callers are indicating that they're not hearing you well, so I'm going to have to terminate the call. But thank you very much for your call, though.
Okay, all right. Have a good night.
You're welcome. There you have it. Everyone's opinion is welcome, but the caller said Andrew Wholeness has improved the JCF, the JDF, and the employment figure. Do you believe him? If you are at home, is that your experience at home? Those of you in the diaspora, is that your experience? And is that the experience of your friends and your family at home who you communicate with? But who else may we go after tonight? The church or Delroy Chuck? Come on, weigh up the balance. Who do I go after? The church or Chuck? The church or Chuck? A church in the day speak, This was the Delroy Chuck who last Tuesday, stand in our parliament. Brittany Lyon, good evening and welcome. Andrea, good evening and welcome. Nova, good evening and welcome. Who else has arrived? Who do I go after tonight, dear God? The church or Chuck? The church have a way of staying very silent, or has shown that they are so in bed with corrupt politicians that no matter what our politicians do to the people, the church is willing to platform. Dorothy Elliott, good evening and welcome. The church is willing to platform crooked politicians in order to maintain the status quo. This is always a contention with me at law school. The unspoken organ of the Constitution. Because when they teach a constitutional law, They teaches you about the executive, which is the cabinet, and all the other departments of government. That's the executive. They teach you about the judiciary, the judges and the prosecutors and all those malarkey we Paul Llewellyn don't understand quite well. And they taught you about the legislature, the House of Representatives, and the House of Senate. Those are the organs of governance of a country. Abina, good evening and welcome. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. But I'm always of the contention. You have left an organ of the Constitution out, the unspoken organ of the Constitution, the church. That which who holds the masses in psychological contempt. I repeat, Joan Brown, good evening and welcome. That which hold the masses in psychological contempt, and by way of paving the broad street open. You know, on the America foreign, on the cheat them big and church out just so. On the America foreign, on the street them big and broad and church out. The church, the unspoken organ of the Constitution, that which holds the people psychologically in contempt, better must come, wait upon God, and the wholeness hope program. He quoted the religious philosophy around it, the hope. We shall overcome. The contempt that the church hold us in order to pave the way for politicians. And a politician alone in our pocket. The church is a willing thief. The church is a willing thief. Willing to suck the pocket dry of poor people without even creating opportunity and employment. And these churches platform politicians in order so politicians can come and fool you. You think when they talk about principalities and power in high and wicked places, you think it's only talking about politics? It's talking about the churches. The demonic churches, the church that were directly involved in a cult using the name of God and Christ to deceive you. The churches which their bank balance are rich. Richer than the amount of wholeness has spent out of the National Housing Trust. But these churches never see poor people. They never see the disadvantaged children. The church never see those money they have in their bank balance, how much they could do in creating wealth and job. Thieving Archbishop Father Ken. I'm still waiting for the answer for Father Albert Asset. Yes, Father Albert, that white priest. Father Archbishop Ken of the Anglican Church. Thieving Archbishop Ken. I dare you to sue me because I can produce loan document. Thieving Pastor Ken. Thieving Archbishop Ken. The highest archbishop in Jamaica. Thieving. Lift shut. Broke shop. Archbishop Ken, I have documents where you sell dead people land. Because no, this is the whole thing with trust. The trust won't say politician a walk and thief and pack up the same thing them all about wo yonder under private trust, express trust, secret trust, blind trust, and all of the buggerants. This whole trust thing was created out of the same church land holdings. Thiefing, Brock Packet, Brock Shop, Lift Shot, Archbishop Ken. The stolen lands, the lands that you have sold for those dead people who don't have relative, Father Ken. Because a long time the church had it, you know. The church was the landholder in slavery and still is. The Church of England, the Anglican Church. With thieving Archbishop Father Ken, there was a white priest, Father Albert, very rich. That man used to chuck barrels of barrels into downtown, into West Kingston, to support the people. That man died, left assets in Jamaica. And thieving Father Ken, Lift Shot, Brook Shop, Father Ken, is the one who swindled those wealth, sell off a lot of land. Sue me, Father Ken, I'm ready. Archbishop Ken, the slave master Protestant pastor Ken. Go and sue me. I dare you. I dare you, Archbishop Ken. If you think I am defaming you, Bishop Ken, Archbishop Ken, the thief, the crook, the criminal. Good evening, Mary Messenger, 411 TV. How are you? Good evening and welcome. Andrew is a Seventh-day Adventist, another set of rich, corrupt, thieving crooks. Me know my sister go bash me here now, but she know me well, so me always go hard after the Seventh-day Adventist church because them a thief and them a crook, and they have billions of your money that they collect from you every Saturday in their bank balance. They could do a lot for young, disadvantaged people. The churches could create entities and business and factories with the amount of money they have. If the church care about crime and poverty and lifting people's social standard, those money that the churches steal on a weekly basis, they should invest it in lifting the social standard of the people. But no, everybody wants to have a big bank balance. But thieving Father Ken, Brook Shop, Lift Shot Father Ken, Archbishop Ken, sue me. And then you will see facts rolled out. Who have the papers for the land where you sell? Thieving Archbishop Ken. You all are criminals. Whether you are all church people or at the SDA, them thief, you know, but to me, nah lie, me was a part of them thief and or they're gonna pardon. Thief, nah lie. Can't them fingers sticky as the Prime Minister. You never wonder why the Prime Minister and the Governor General are so thief? Have you ever wondered why the Prime Minister and the Governor General are so thief? Both the Prime Minister and the Governor General like and share the live and tell them say we murder them over here because and say a long time them have mistreat with and we fi stop hold back. But do you all know that the Governor General is a thief as much as the Prime Minister? The Governor General and the Prime Minister, both of them are Adventists. crookish. And they have some brilliant smile. And they have some convincing way of speaking to you. The Governor General, when he was, a lot of you know of this, or would be or should be aware of this, Winston Gibbs, good evening and welcome. Began 1 hour, I not reach Parla yet. Come still there, pan Chuck. Pauline, Pauline Dixon, good evening and welcome. No, them can't sue me. Thiefing, broke pack, broke shop, lift shut, Archbishop Ken cannot sue me. I have proved that Archbishop Ken sold lands. I have proved that Father Albert died, leave a lot of asset in Jamaica with broke shop, lift shut, Father Archbishop Ken swindle off everything. It's not a lie. And he cannot sue me because he knows that he won't be able to do it successfully. But the Adventist Church, the Governor General, your Sir Patrick Allen, the criminal, was the president, because the Jamaica Seventh-day Adventist Church, they have conference all over the place. You have West Jamaica Conference in Montego Bay that deal with a sector of the Western Hemisphere. You have Central Jamaica Conference in, I think that's based in Mandeville, Manchester. And then you have East Jamaica Conference. I think that's based somewhere in Kingston. He was the president of the East Jamaica Conference of the Seventh-day Adventist Church before becoming Governor General. And that crook uses, Janet Bailey, good evening and welcome. That crook uses a lot of the money of East Jamaica Conference to invest. Investment is gambling, high-class gambling, in cash plus and all-in, one of Jamaica's failed financial embezzlers. We must not be afraid to call out the church. The church is involved in a lot. Whether it be scamming, money laundering. Some of them pastor do to it is scamming, money laundering, stealing, child molesting, raping. The church is involved in all them. Let's be truthful and stop shadow the church. The church platform criminals. If the church is the church shouldn't allow politicians to come in the church and platform them to lie and deceive. And I don't want with it. Shadow the church. Shadow the church when the church is platforming politicians to lie to you and deceive you in order to maintain a status quo that benefit the whole of them. But Delroy Chuck, you half get to it. You half get to it tonight because you know me, I'm going to come back for you. No. Lady Nolly prosecute. Lady Nolly prosecute. Because we said, yes, amazing great. They got salt. I love you so much. No, there is a debacle in the court between Paula and the judge today. The article is in the description here. You can read it for yourself. I'm not going to go through the whole article with you because remember, I them all. But I'm going to explain to you what happened. This is in regards to a rape trial that was going on in court. At the time of the incident, it was a social media interaction where a young man invited, that's what the facts of the case says, invited the young lady to his house on social media. The young lady was 17, the young man was 16. Invited her to his house. She alleged that he raped her. JJ, good evening and welcome. But not only that, she alleged that he also held her down for his friend to rape her. It is important to bear in mind that at the time of the incident, the young man in question was 16. Therefore, regardless of the offense, he had to be treated as a minor. He had to be treated as a minor because of the age of the incident. Regardless of how old he is now, you still have to treat him when in court as a 16-year-old when Joya, good evening and welcome. Joya, sorry. When passing judgment, the issue arose where the young man pled guilty to the offense. I don't know, so I down the number as well, so we're going to work on a 2-year basis. But somebody please work out in the chat for me what is 1/3 of 2 years. What is 1/3 of 24 months? Somebody work that out for me, come and dance. Pleading guilty at first instance, what that does, it saves the court's time, one, and it saves the public purse money when an accused person pleads guilty. So someone saying 8 is 1/3. So you take off 8, so it got left 12, or so. So let's say the offense of this young man, he would have received 24 months of custodial sentence. Because he pled guilty at first instance, there would be an 8-month reduction on his sentence. So if a custodial sentence is to be imposed, then it would be a 12-month sentence. When a judge is imposing a sentence, most of the time, the judge has 2 frameworks to work from. The judge has what is a sentencing guideline, which is laid down by law, how it should be tackled, how the appropriate sentencing from minimum to maximum for that particular offense. Another framework that the judge, in a lot of cases, also have is the discretion allowed to them in law with their experience and human knowledge to apply in sentencing. In that case, before the court, well, the nulli prosequi is at the stage where the sentence was about to impose, Paula withdrew the case from court and say she do not, in the interest of justice on behalf of the victim, she do not wish to prosecute because the judge was about to impose a non-custodial sentence, meaning, yes, the judge was going to impose a sentence, but the person wasn't going to go to prison. Right, so after the reduction of the 8-month leaving 12, the judge still have the discretion. One, you ask for a social report. For those of you in the UK, that would be a probation report. Now, the social report is also important, especially if it's somebody who has committed a first offense. The social report would look at the history of the person before the offense, the remorse of the person since the offense, the family background and the standing of the person, the likelihood of the person go on to commit another offense, the benefit society would get from that person receiving a custodial sentence. What is there a benefit to the defendant being imposed a custodial sentence rather than other punishment? So the judge have all of those things to look at when coming to a decision in imposing a sentence. All of those things are taken into discretion. A non-custodial sentence could be community service, it could be fine, it could be probation, it could be also what is called a conditional discharge, where the judge would impose that 12-month sentence on him, but discharge the sentence. That discharge doesn't go on your report, but what happens is if you commit any offense within that 12 months, or sometimes they would even discharge it for longer. The sentence could be 12 months, but the judge could discharge it for 2-3 years. Jennifer Hardwick, Ricks, good evening and welcome. If you get into any legal woes within that time, you commit any other offense, then they can send you straight to prison to do that discharge sentence that the court discharged. So I cannot say whether the judge had violated that process or there was an abuse of process by the judge. But anybody in legal land, even if you spend 1 year in law school, you would be knowledgeable enough to know, because your first year in law school, more than likely, you're going to study 2 areas of law that would give you an understanding of the situation. You would be studying constitutional law, and you'll be studying the English legal system and the judicial process. Most people generally do those courses in first year of law school. So first year law school student would know of a system open to parlor by called appeal by way of case stated. Even if the judge violated or abused the process in sentencing, all Paula had to do is indicate there and then to the judge, we're going straight for a case stated appeal. We're going straight for a case stated appeal and a point of law. What Paula is doing here is even asking you, the public, to spend more money to go and start over a whole retrial again. This defendant can plead not guilty, contest the trial in the issue of this type of rape, where both parties are at the age of consent. So there won't be an argument of age consent here. But what clever defense lawyer are going to do is to use a consent argument to say she consented to it because she traveled XYZ, which sometimes is a silly legal defense, because the fact that a woman is in your bed naked doesn't give you the right to rape her or doesn't mean that she wants to have such interaction with you. That's how the law operates. But what all Paula had to do is indicate to the court, allow the proceeding to continue, rather than submit a notice to the court last month to say we wish not to go further with this prosecution in the interest of justice. We want to start afresh in front of a different judge. But what confused me in the back and forth rant between Paula and the judge, read the article yourself. Paula did this very similar thing already in a murder case, and from my understanding of the article, was with the same judge where the judge was going to proceed with a murder trial, and Paula withdraw the case from the judge as well. So, Nolly Prosecutor, Nzinga pull it out, not enough evidence, time has passed, age has passed. Delroy Robinson, good evening and welcome. Knowledge has passed. It's time for Paula to go. There's a constant assault on our prosecutorial process, which tells us Paula Llewellyn is inept, incompetent, foolish at best as an experienced director of prosecution. Why such an experience? Why such an experienced person keeps getting it wrong, horribly wrong? A confusion. Jamaica 411. Good evening and welcome. I know you always listen. First time seeing you in the chat. Paula Llewellyn confused between Section 5 and Section 45. Paula Llewellyn allowed Andrew Holness to get away with corruption. Paula Llewellyn allowed Paula Llewellyn and NEPA allowed Mark Barnett to get away. Paula Llewellyn turned her back on Nzinga King. Paula Llewellyn allowed murderers and scammers to get off trial because of her incompetency and Fitzbailey and his team shoddy way of investigating. It's time for Paula Llewellyn to go. Jamaica should lend their voices during this local government election and tell all of their representatives Paula Llewellyn and Fitzbailey needs to go. The corrupt ring that hold Andrew together needs to go. Those who protect Andrew criminality needs to go. And don't forget Jamaica. You must ask every political representative, local and or national government, who are the illicit six? My vote depends on whether I'm voting for criminals or not. My vote depends on whether I'm voting for criminal or not. Earl Allen, good evening and welcome. Enough of holding the people in contempt. Enough of politicians and churches holding the people in contempt. It is time for the people to get involved in the political process. There won't be change until we all get involved in the political process and let them be aware that we are involved in the process. Because the lack of involvement is a massive strength to them. Let us treat this election different. Let us show them that we want a share of the pie. And let us keep Mark Golden unnoticed. But here, St. Andrew, Kingston and St. Andrew, have you seen the red wall? How much money is Juliet and Andrew planning to spend in Kingston and St. Andrew? When you see that red wall, how much money do they plan to spend to buy votes in Kingston and St. Andrew? But also Mark Golden is on notice. We should put Mark Golden on notice. If you don't take home this election, if you do not take home the local government election, Mark Golden, we demand your resignation in 72 hours for a quiet leadership transfer in the People's National Party, because it would be terribly unwise to go to a central government election with a leader who couldn't take home a local government election. I am 23 minutes past my time. Thank you very much for being here with me this evening on another program of 2024 Jamaica Decide. Thank you all for joining us. Lovely to have you here as usual. And if you did not hit the like button on your way in, please do hit it on your way out. Please do also share so the message can go much further out there. I didn't even remember to tell you, oh my God, that my interviews for tonight were postponed, but I also have two People's National Party candidates from Portland, hopefully one from East, one from West, who will be coming tomorrow evening. If you're a member of the Jamaica Labour Party and you want your candidate, you want to hear your councillors, your council candidate and your mayoral candidates speak, set out their stall on Global TV. Give them my number, arrange it with them, tell them Global TV is platforming them so they can set out their stall. But what we will not do over here is tell the masses who to vote for. What we want to do is to make sure you have the information so all of you make an informed choice and not a bad choice, as our Prime Minister made by appointing a loose, incompetent Director of Public Prosecution. This was Jamaica Decide. Thank you very much for being here tonight. Thank you very much, Cousin Marina. Thank you. Good night to those on the X, to those on the Twitch, on Facebook, on YouTube. Good night, and we will see you tomorrow. Thank you all for joining us.